Hello everyone, I will be taking you all through the history of the Night Lords and their Primarch, Conrad Kurz, and how their twisted lives have brought terror to all Imperial citizens. My sons, the galaxy is burning. We all bear witness to the final truth. Our way is not the way of the Imperium. You have never stood in the Emperor's light, never worn the Imperial eagle, and you never will. You shall stand in the midnight clad, your claws forever red with the lifeblood of my father's failed empire, wavering through the centuries as the talons of a murdered god. Rise, my sons, and take your wrath across the stars. In my name, in my memory, rise, my Night Lords. The origin of the 8th Legion was soaked in blood from its birth. The first recruits for the Legion came from the linked prison sinks of ancient terror. These men and women who transgressed against the laws of their masters, condemned never to see the light again or breathe free air. They lived out their lives in fear and blind darkness. In these lightless lands there was no law, and survival only existed at the blade's edge. Only the strongest and the most ruthless survived in the subterranean prison. The prison sink were an even hungrier gate to madness and murder. The millions who lived and died in this prison sink, not all of them banished from the world above. Amongst the bloodshed and fear, children were born, cradled in the dark, and raised amongst death. Those who lived over a solar decade were pale, silent creatures who moved without a sound. The Night's Children, the prisoners called them, and even the most savage killers would not seek them out by choice. It was from these children the Emperor would create the first warriors of the 8th Legion. These Marines' skin was so pale it resembled ash or powdered bone, and were far from the other legionaries in manner and appearance. The gene seed for the Night Lords seemed to be pure, bearing the least amount of evidence of mutation. The only notable physical abnormality was their jet black eyes and pale skin. This became even more evident with the introduction of the Door People of Nostromo. Surprisingly, of all the Chaos Traitor legions, the Night Lords had the least amount of mutations. This could be from them having an unusual stable gene seed stock, or perhaps it's from not having much interaction with Chaos power for any length of time. However, like all things in Warhammer, there's always a worse fate, as in, the Night Lords would have the tendency for paranoia and self-destructive behavior. It also said that their Chaos Sorcerers have pronounced vulnerability that caused them to be racked with painful seizures in which they experience visions. The gene seed of their Primarch gave the sons of the Terran underworld the ability to see through darkness to a degree that far exceeded that of the Astartes of other legions. This gift was also cursed, forcing them to see the light of the sun and stars through filters and flare buffers. Even though they now walked in the light of the world above, the warriors of the 8th Legion already walked in eternal darkness. Falling like a crackling ball of light to the night-shrouded planet of Nostromo, his embryonic form gestation capsule ripping through countless levels of urban debris and mouldering architecture, though the planet's crust and into the geosphere, finally coming to a halt near the highly unstable liquid core of the planet. The created pit his descent had carved into the planet was closed over and later was regarded with fear and superstition. In theory, the only way the Primarch could have reached the surface was to have swum through molten metal or had his gestation capsule borne upwards through volcanic vents to the surface. Unlike his brothers, Kurz was never adopted by a human family and was forced to fend for his life in the world of the Underhive of Nostro Quintus. In his early life, surviving off his wits and determination, feeding himself by hunting the feral animals that roamed through the vast hive city, he was plagued by precognitive visions of the darkest possible future. Horrifyingly potent waking dreams that would curse him throughout his life. Uniquely, Among all the Primarchs, Kurz grew up completely alone, without other human contact, surviving only thanks to his wits, ruthlessness, and the courage as a child in the underhive of Nostromo Quintus. With his genetically enhanced body and mind, Kurz quickly established himself as a major power in the hive city of Nostromus, and thanks to the countless atrocities committed by him against the world's criminal gangs and corrupted nobles, a semblance of law was eventually imposed upon first Nostromo Quintus and then the 4 other hive cities. Within a standard year of his arrival in the hive city, the crime rate of Nostromo had fallen away to nothing. Nostromo society was transformed, and the ripple was felt all over the planet. Nostromo Quintus developed a self-imposing curfew. None dared to stray out later than the early evening. The midnight streets, previously buzzing with activity, were silent as the grave. Mothers threatened disobedient children with the depraved attentions of the night hunter. Soon the name became more commonplace, used by the populace as a whole. Rumours of a hideous dark creature that stalked the alleyways and tunnels, its filthy claws ever ready to disembowel those who strayed, abandoned within the city. The citizens of Quintus lived a half-life of fear, silence lest the world should be taken as heresy. Nostromo was ripe for the roar of the night hunter. Kurz almost single-handedly rid Nostromo of its culture of crime and predation, using terror as a weapon to crush the planet's ruling criminal syndicates and their corrupt overseers. He then re-established the rule of law under his own draconian leadership, and was revered by the Nostroman people as a benevolent and just dictator. Kurz almost single-handedly rid Nostromo of its culture of crime and predation, using terror as a weapon to crush the planet's ruling criminal syndicate and their corrupt overseers. He then re-established the rule of law under his own draconian leadership, and was revered by the Nostroman people as a benevolent and just dictator. The Night Hunter became the first monarch or Dark King of Nostromo Quintus, absorbing accumulated knowledge with a diligence almost akin to greed. He ruled with a temperance and reasoned unheard of until word came to him that some injustice had been done, whereupon he alone would hunt the offender through the hive cities, empty streets until exhaustion forced his quarry to a collapse. He would then proceed to mutilate his prey, although not beyond recognition. As the Emperor's arrival to Nostromo, as was prophesied in the planet's history, this event would lead to the planet's downfall. His arrival brought the light of the sun to the night-shrouded world for the first time. The Emperor landed on Nostromo and led an imperial delegation to the center of Nostromo Quintus on foot. The citizens of Nostromo adapted to the near-constant darkness and could not bear the divine light that resonated from the Emperor, as most would weep as the light he projected would reflect off the rain-slicked streets into their faces. Those brave enough to look up at him would go blind. At the end of the broad road leading to the Night Hunter's royal palace, the Primarchs stood, waiting for the delegation to approach. As they did, he succumbed to a psychic vision of the future, so potent and horrifying that he tried to claw his own eyes out, but was stopped by the Emperor. Night Haunter then looked at the Emperor, and the master of mankind said to his newfound son, "Be at peace, Conrad Kurz. I have arrived, and I intend to take you home." "That is not my name, father. My people gave me a name, and I will bear it until my dying day, and I know full well what you intend for me." though Kurz submitted to the Emperor's will, as if he had already seen it, as if he was playing out a part he had long feared would fall to him. From that moment on, the fate of the 8th Legion was set on a dark path to damnation. From the very first, the Night Lords were mostly what they would become, taken from pale-skinned refugees who lived in the darkest parts of the world. The early Night Lords would develop the alabaster skin and super-sensitive senses they would always have. Most tellingly, they had a stern and intense sense of right and wrong, and their motto was to brutally punish their foes with overwhelming force whenever possible. They were used as punishment. Brutality was always common. When Konrad Kurz was reunited with his legion, he was quickly accepted by his legion and encouraged his legion to decorate their power armor with images designed to inspire fear in the enemy, and this tactic would prove effective. The reuniting of Primarch and Legion was the beginning of a spiral that would see the Night Lords descend further into horror and annihilation. Once a Night Hunter was found and they began recruiting from Nasraramo, it was remarked on how well the original Terrans and the Nasraraman stock fit together, perfectly like two sides of the same coin. Their role in the Great Crusade did not change much at all with the coming of the Primarch. Though after Kurz's departure, Nasraramo shook off his enforced peace, returning to lawlessness. From this point, Nasraramo fed the 8th Legion, not with the finest of its youth, but with gutter scum soaked in blood and cruelty. Some claim that this began to poison the Legion, twisting its purpose and making many Night Lords simple murderers, gifted with genetically engineered strength of demigods. This thesis, though willingly fully ignored a number of factors, no least of which was Kurz's leadership of his legion. That he came to despise his own gene-sons is likely, but he was still their lord. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor would use the 8th Legion as a tool of terror to pacify planets that had been taken over by other legions, as their fearsome reputation caused any rebel leaders or rogue planetary governors against imperial compliance to quickly pay any outsiding taxes or quell their uprising. The Night Lords were known to issue exterminatus orders, these being an action ordered by the highest authorities of the Imperium of Man to destroy an entire planetary biosphere and all life upon a world, and the Night Lords had done this to several worlds for the most petty of crimes against the Imperium. The Emperor had concern about the 8th Legion and the apparent mental instability of their Primarch, and this is clear. But what is not clear is what was done to restrain Kurz or his sons. There were words, demands, perhaps even threats, but no action, no hand of judgment to throttle the Night Lord's crimes. Why this was so in question that can never be now answered, and the Imperium was left only with the consequences. They were creatures of the dark, harnessed to the will of a father, racked by righteousness and foreboding. What else could have been their fate but to fall back into the night from whence they came? And the list of atrocities grew even larger in the solar decades as Kurz spiraled down a path of darkness, and how the Night Lords were the most sinister and the most suspect, having been censored for the crimes and massacres carried out in the Emperor's service. This all came to head to Kurz finally turned against the Emperor and joining Horus in his band of misfits in going against the Imperium. With the storm of heresy coming in, and with the Night Lords going rogue, they were one of the 7 legions dispatched to destroy the gathered traitor legions at the Istvan system. While the record doesn't clearly state why a rogue legion was tasked to join the loyalist Astartes forces charged to exterminate the traitors, there was an account put forth the view of the imperial justice system was both so slow and unsure of how to deal with the Night Lords that the Imperial military commanders issued the order anyway in a hurry to assemble a powerful enough force to crush the traitor legions and Horus. Upon Isstvan V, the Night Lords, alongside the World Bearers, Iron Warriors, and the Alpha Legion, turned on the Loyalist legions, who had arrived earlier and took part in the drop site massacre. Upon dismantling the Raven Guard, the Iron Hands, and the Salamanders, the Night Lords returned to the galactic east and began an apparently unfocused genocidal campaign. Most likely, this was designed to stop any support from this area reaching Terra. Eventually, however, the Night Lord's fleet was ambushed and badly mauled by the Dark Angels at the climax of the Framas Crusade. 1/5 of the Legion was confirmed destroyed, and Kurz badly injured and comatose from his fight with Lionel Johnson. This forced Servitor to take the reins of the Broken Legion, and before his capture he would divide the Legion into 6 parts and scatter them. Kurz, who was stranded on the Dark Angel's flagship, found a way to escape to Makrak, and became a target of a planet-wide hunt by the Dark Angels. The Lion eventually tracked him down and recaptured, and became a prisoner of the Lion, Rebute Guilliman, and Sanguinius. These 3 Primarchs would make a push to Terra and took Kurz with them, but Sanguinius eventually decided to dispose of him by freezing him in a stasis coffin and injecting him into deep space. During the Siege of Terra, the Night Lords didn't get to do much, and upon Horus's defeat, the Night Lords continued their bloody massacre upon the galactic east, while nearly every other legion had been dismantled in the fighting, and all the other traitor legions had begun retreating to the Eye of Terra. The Night Lords' legion remained unified and retained the bulk of their pre-heresy numbers. While in deep space, the stasis coffin would be picked up by an Imperial salvage ship, and within this ship was an Imperial assassin who was hidden among the crew of the vessel that broke the surface of the coffin, awakening Kurz. Kurz went about killing everyone bar one crew member named Alvin, the assassin who was able to send an alert to his temple before meeting his end by the Primarch's hands. With only Kurz and the crew member on the ship, Kurz took him as a slave to pilot the ship to Kurz's intended destination, being one of the Night Lord's last fortresses maintained. But as the ship had no warp drive, this took them several Terran years, and as this happened, Alvin would gain a perspective glimpse into Kurz's mind, and came to a realization that the Night Hunter in fact had doubts regarding the truth of his precognitive visions, and the belief he had created around them. To keep his secret safe, Kurz had the Night Lords kill his slave when he rejoined his legion. It is known that throughout his life, Kurz had possessed the gift, many would say curse, of psychic foresight. He was constantly struck with powerful visions of the worst of all possible futures, and that his last had been a foretelling that he would die at the hands of one such as Meshin. This prophetic psychic ability was passed on to the other Night Lords who shared their gene-sized genetic heritage. This was a unique trait, as it is said to be unrelated to the warp taints or of other known psychic properties. It is believed that Kurz let his assassination happen in order to show his father, the Emperor of Mankind, that he stood by his belief as surely as the Emperor stood by his. After the assassination of Konrad Kurz, the Legion splintered into multiple feuding warbands, as is the nature of all those who serve chaos willingly or not, and eventually relocated to the Eye of Terra. By the 41st millennia, the Legion had distorted in both its numbers and capabilities. There was also continued infighting within the Legion, as there was no clear leadership, with several ranking Night Lords contending for the right to lead the entire Legion. Currently, the Night Lords hire themselves out as mercenaries and elite shock troops for the other forces of chaos, or even for pirates who raid Imperial worlds. With the coming of the Great Rift splitting the Imperium in half, the Night Lords welcomed this with relish, as Imperium Nihilus was engulfed into darkness as they were cut off from the Astronomicon, while the other half, the Imperium Sanctus, was left in confusion and chaos, leaving the warband of these piratical heretic Astartes to indulge their every depraved whim. The remnants of the 8th Legion, whose numbers had been reduced to an existence of piracy and raving in order to replenish their battle gear and numbers, proposed like never before. Multiple worlds would be stripped by Night Lords warriors, and several Space Marine fortress monasteries were raided, gene seeds stolen and armories emptied, the defenders mutilated and ritually slaughtered. Worse still, the Legion Chaos sorcerers devised new methods of exploiting humanity's weakened state. These methods were as cunning as they were unthinkably cruel. Thousands of astropaths were abducted and subjected to agonizing torment, for the sons of Conrad Kurz had learnt how to use the combined psychic trauma of their victims to create siren signals that would divert or lure stranded Imperial vessels into their clutches. The Night Lords learned to practice this dark art on a grand scale. Entire worlds were transformed in moments to pain and terror, and the sons of Kurz delighted in every gruesome atrocity. This has been the lore for the Night Lords, from their origins to the Horus Heresy, and finally to the 40k. I hoped everyone enjoyed. This has been Crossbones. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Goodbye.